Honestly, this is a selfish question because I run a media brand and
Oh, I know what you're doing here.
no, why did you get to the point? This is no BS. Why did you get to the point where you're like, you know what? As an organization,
Yeah.
we're ready to get acquired. We're going to cash in some chips. Obviously, you're still working there. You still have goals and motivation.
Yeah.
But why was it the right time to go through an exit? Welcome to the Martech Podcast. I'm your host, Benjamin Shapiro, and today we're going to discuss the Martech acquisition landscape. Joining me today is Marc Sirkin, who is the CEO of Third Door Media, which is a media company that was recently acquired by Semrush, a leading online visibility management SaaS platform that empowers it's millions of digital marketers worldwide. And Third Door Media is the creator of well-circulated marketing publications, including Search Engine Land, Digital Marketing Depot, and of course, martech.org. And today, Marc and I are going to discuss the story behind Semrush's acquisition of Third Door Media. All right, here's my conversation with Marc Sirkin, the CEO of Third Door Media. Marc, welcome back to the Martech Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to see you.
It's great to have you here. And first and foremost, congrats, buddy. Lots of news. I know it's not exactly brand new, but you got acquired. I'm so excited for you.
We got acquired. Absolutely. I appreciate the excitement and the congratulations. Yeah, October 16th, I think the deal officially closed after about a year of trying to get it done. So it was a long journey. As they say, deals die 1,000 times, and this one died that many times, if not more.
Yeah.
But here we are. We're three or so months into it, and loving it.
I want to hear the details of every death and every revival, and I got to hear the whole story. And I appreciate you coming on the podcast and telling everybody the hairy truth. You know, you were one of our earliest sponsors. Obviously, we work in very similar spaces in media focused on MarTech. And I also have an SEO podcast. You do the SEO conferences as well. I feel like we've been standing next to each other for a long time. And now I feel like you're leaps and bounds and steps ahead of me. And you became the president of the company. So multiple congratulations.
Thank you.
Let's get into it. Let's start off, just give me the context. For anybody that isn't familiar, tell me a little bit about the background of Third Door Media, what it was as a standalone company.
Yeah. I mean, Third Door Media was a long time B2B media marketing company with roots in search. 2006 or so, founders of the old SES started Third Door Media as a venture. Search Engine Land was born. SMX followed quickly. There's a site that a lot of people used to really love called Marketing Land, followed that. We're into, let's say, 2014 timeframe, and MarTech happened. Or I should say Scott Brinker kind of godfathered, MarTech.
The godfather of the MarTech industry, Scott Brinker.
That's right, the godfather. And so Chris Elwell, who was one of the founders, along with Danny Sullivan of Third Door Media, I think the story goes Christmas or something. Chris is reading MarTech, Chief MarTech, and is like, this is a space that seems happening. We should maybe talk. So he had a conversation with Scott in the MarTech conference in Boston in 2014, I think it was sort of born. And that led to lots of things. Our revenue model flipped from search to MarTech. Money was rushing in as the MarTech landscape got built. We've all seen Scott's landscape graphics. It's 14,000 companies or whatever. And so we kind of rode that wave and continue to ride that wave to some extent, creating martech.org as a sort of combination of Marketing Land, which had been dropping in traffic. We really weren't servicing social media and broader marketing topics. And the old MarTech Today news site kind of combined those together into martech.org, linked it with the conference, and, off we went right into the pandemic.
So your business model has changed as well during that time, where you had the media publications, which were primarily written content, right? Blogs for the most part. And then you were also monetizing through in-person conferences. Obviously, COVID impacted that business. Tell me a little bit about where the money was coming from.
So the revenue streams are fairly simple. And, you can look at it from it's mostly lead gen. And I'll describe what I mean by that. But lead generation, in as much as white papers, webinars, all the standards, right? All the big hits, including events, and then advertising revenue, obviously on the sites. As the sites grow, you eventually earn a way to monetize through advertising. And then, we would sell across the network. Again, pretty traditional media, digital media company. Value across the network. Our philosophy is that they're all marketers, right? Like if you're a search marketer, a MarTech marketer, are all marketers. It's kind of what led to the MarTech tagline of MarTech is marketing. But ultimately from a lead gen standpoint, they're all marketers. And our sites tend to attract mid-market to enterprise marketers. We have a few creators and solopreneurs and agencies, but it's really designed and written for kind of enterprise marketers. That's the niche that we carved out. It's what enabled us to run these sort of higher end event experiences. SMX, not a cheap conference. Martech, not a cheap conference to attend, but you go and you have that kind of premium experience. So it's sort of across those lines that we built and monetized the media company. Again, nothing super fancy. They're pretty basic, but we executed it pretty well.
And then post COVID, the in-person events has changed. Tell us the story about that.
Yeah, I mean, so COVID, so we are almost literally getting on a plane in, I think this was March, I guess, of what was that,
2020.
2020. In fact, I'd flown back from Iceland and I was in Boston, and it was like, in Iceland, we didn't really know what was going on. Like, it was like, there's some news, and then you land in Boston. It's like, oh, the world's on fire. What the hell's going on here? So in the face of that, our event was going to happen in San Jose, and it was like a daily thing. Are they going to shut California down? Like, are we going to actually be able to not do this event? Or are we going to be forced to do this event? And eventually, it happened, and they shut everything down. And within probably about 2 weeks, I'm going to guess, we started pivoting. This concept of a virtual event had been around for a number of years. Nobody had really pulled it off very well. We just put our backs into it and said, you know what, we think we can make this work. We work with our customers to give them credits to sort of transfer from the in-person experience to the virtual experience. And we took a shot. And that first event registered a ton of people. I think it was a Martech event. It was the Martech event. I think we registered 9,000 or 10,000 people online. It was like, oh, this is great. People were home and they were interested in that event. It became a free event. Obviously, you can't really do a premium in-person event through an online format. But the sponsors, that we had were interested to see, how was it going to work? And it worked pretty well. And, we then rolled that out for SMX and then continued all the way through COVID. Coming out of COVID, what's interesting is, there's a big desire, there's it's a human level thing. Like, people want to get back and be with each other. And we get it. And so it's not really breaking news, but we're going to come back. We're going to do in-person SMX in Boston in June. We just got approval to do it like yesterday. So SMX Advanced for the first time ever is going to be in Boston in June 12th, 13th. And it's really interesting because all those old muscles come back. It's like, oh, right. All that planning, all that stuff, food, like Wi-Fi costs, like all that nonsense. Yeah. But that's what it is, right? That's how you put on a great experience. And so we're launching that. We're looking at launching Martech in person at some point. I have no imminent date. Let me survive SMX first. But
look forward to the announcements. I think what you're describing is what I think in the consumer section, it was revenge travel. And now it seems like there's revenge conferencing, where people just want to go to conferences and actually get together with people in person, because it's been years since we have all gotten together. To wrap up the background of Third Door Media, prior to the acquisition, give me a sense of the scope and size of the company.
I like to say, I kind of got known for saying internally, like, we punch above our weight class. Like, we're a 30-person company, and we have been for a very long time. It's a group of really dedicated, really smart, really intelligent, really scrappy marketers and operators. I mean, that's the media business today, right? Like, there's no two martini lunches. Yeah, exactly. And so, there's 30 of us, and, it's a range of skills. Everyone wears a lot of hats, which is always interesting, especially, and we can talk a little bit about Semrush, but coming into Semrush, where I don't want to say people don't wear a lot of hats, but it's not the same as in a 30-person company where, it's like you're pretty much doing everything.
You're part of a publicly traded company.
Exactly.
Now, so,
and still doing everything in part of a publicly traded company. So it's been fun. It's been a really interesting transition for me personally. I had worked in big companies before. So, but, I've been really being careful with, my team and people who haven't, like, this is kind of what it's like with, expectation setting and all the stuff. You do all the stuff at big companies. Yeah. It's great. It's super fun. But yeah, I mean, really scrappy organization. Chris, a guy who I think I couldn't think more highly of. His navigation of COVID and the things that we went through to make sure the company survived, and the care he took in making sure that everybody was okay. Really remarkable leadership lessons that I hopefully have absorbed and take forward into the future. So yeah, learned a ton. And, we had been trying to sell the company for a while, to truth be told. And
I want to get into that, but first I want to talk a little bit about Semrush, your acquirer, and talk a little bit about what you know now that you're on the other side about their motivations.
Yeah.
So why would Semrush, a technology company, want to buy a media company like Third Door Media?
I think that's a great question. I can give you my interpretation from the conversations we've had. Obviously, I've been through the acquisition. So what they were saying to us and what has proven to be 100% true, the guy's name is Nick Eubanks, who approached us. They really saw major synergies in the core Semrush product and search engine land and SMX. And kind of where Semrush is headed, broadly speaking, is like a lot of platforms, but this is public information, right? Like they are building and they've just now launched an enterprise product. So like I said earlier, we have this enterprise audience. There's some synergies there. And ultimately, Semrush is a MarTech company, right? They're in the universe. They make technology for marketers. They're MarTech. And so having their arms and legs around a brand like MarTech with their content sensibility, which is to say, MarTech and Search Engine Land remain independently run news organizations, which we're doing. And we were skeptical, but okay, let's see what happens. And they've left us alone from a news standpoint, but they've added all these resources and capabilities to us to improve content, reach, scope, scale, resources, you name it. It's really been interesting to see. And now with the launch of SMX, it's really all coming true, right? Like we're really aligned with where Semrush is going. And I think it works in a really nice way in terms of us helping to build and give extension to the Semrush brand in the universe, and also giving us the resources we need to continue what we were doing, right? Which was becoming increasingly difficult as a small media company in this environment.
Yeah, I always think, we've all heard the adage, every company is a media company now, or the successful companies are. And I think the question for me is, Semrush, lots of resources, lots of talent, lots of people, and they're going through an acquisition, and there's a build versus buy discussion. Thoughts on why they weren't trying to build and promote their own content?
Yeah, I love that question. And it's been an ongoing dialogue since November 2022 when ChatGPT was launched for us. Because when ChatGPT was launched, we all said, "Oh my God, what does this mean? Like, what is about to happen?" And back 2 years ago, I don't think we were completely right, but we were somewhat right about how important brand is in this universe. And we live in an attention economy. That attention economy is brutal. We see what the social platforms are doing. They're preying on negative emotions. They're hijacking human brains, and they're sucking wind out of a lot of the attention that you can get. And increasingly, all of us are having to do things like that maybe we wouldn't normally do to say, okay, we want to get attention. How do we do it? The reality is that brands are really hard to build. And good luck. You want to try and build a brand like Search Engine Land. I don't know how you would do that today, to be honest. Like, I don't know where you start, or how long it would take, or how much investment it would take.
There's something to be said for independence too. All right. Yeah. This is an established brand that has credibility, but has always been an independent publication. Now, obviously, somebody else is paying the bills, but it's been established to be an industry rag, not a branded piece of content, which I think probably factored into Semrush's decision is having some sort of authority over the publication, but also allowing you to have some autonomy as well. Let's double back, and I want to talk to you now that we kind of have an understanding of what Semrush was thinking. Hey, we want to acquire some media. We don't want to build it ourselves. There's the independence and credibility already established. Cool. You guys are the belle of the ball. What's in it for you? Why were you thinking? And honestly, this is a selfish question because I run a media brand.
I know what you're doing here.
No, why did you get to the point? This is no BS. Why did you get to the point where you're like, you know what? As an organization, we're ready to get acquired. We're going to cash in some chips. Obviously, you're still working there. You still have goals and motivation. But why was it the right time to go through an exit?
I can only speculate about Chris's mindset 3 or so years ago.
Chris, the original.
Chris Elwell. Yeah. One of the founders. The other founder, Danny Sullivan, had left in 2017 and had really, he still owned minority shares, but he was not involved literally at all. Like, I hadn't spoken to him since pre-COVID.
Silent partner.
Yeah. And Chris and I started talking about succession, truth be told. What's going to happen? Like, Chris is of a certain age and wants to step back. And I spent many years, I've been with Third Door almost it'll be 10 years in February. So like, and if you look at my LinkedIn, you'll go, how do you survive 10 years? I was like a lot of men of not men, but professionals of our age, right? Like, I jumped around a lot and tried to figure out where I belonged. And I really felt home at Third Door Media for a lot of reasons. And it became evident that this was kind of, this was going to be me. It was going to be me at some point. And that was scary and exciting all at the same time. And Chris and I have a great relationship. And at some point it was like, well, what do we want to do? Like, do we want to sell it? Do I want to buy it? Can I buy it? What would that look like? We went through all of the conversations, all of them. And we started shopping and seeing who was out there. And the truth is, like, I honestly, less than 5% would I thought anybody but another media company would have wanted to merge or buy or acquire us. When Semrush come knocking, it was like a real head spinner. I was like, oh, this does make a lot of sense in a lot of ways. Hadn't thought of that before. And so, the truth is, like, when we were trying to sell Third Door through COVID, it was hard because, and I don't know how you run your business. Media companies are hard to be high growth. It's tough. The multiples aren't great. No one's paying big. It's not a SaaS company. And so we had struggled with growth. We had just struggled with growth. We just couldn't find consistent growth. And it was tough. The search space has been tough for a lot of years. Not that many enterprise companies in the space. MarTech up and down over the last couple of years. And the story didn't really hang together from a growth standpoint. So it really needed to be 2 + 2 = 4, became very evident. And like I said earlier, deals die a thousand deaths. It was really interesting. Like, up until probably, I would say September, like at some point, my wife, put it this way, my wife at some point said, you know what, do me a favor, don't give me updates.
Yeah, I get that.
It'd be like 90%.
Yeah.
And then 1%. And then 18%. And then it was wild. It really was wild. And my emotions were like up and down, up and down. Do I want this? Do I not want this? It's what we agreed to do. Chris and I agreed years ago, we're going to sell it. This is the path. And then I'll run it if I can. And if not, I'll get bought out or whatever. It's fine. And so it was very up and down. It was very scary. And of course, I was not able to share any of this with my team. So I'm asking for all this information and like, I need this, I need that. Why do you need that? Oh, we're redoing the strategy, whatever nonsense I was saying. I don't even know. Like half the time I was like, I don't know what's going on. And so it was really emotional. And Chris put his life into this company. And like I said, he's a hero and a mentor of mine. And I'm so happy that he was able to sell it, but it was hard. It was hard. It was emotional. Yeah. And like, I think part of the message I had for the Semrush team was like, I mean, this is a family business is what it is. And it's weird because like, from the outside looking in, I don't think Third Door Media sounds or feels or it seems like it might be that, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
And so it's just, it was interesting. I'm still processing some of it in my head.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm benchmarking it. All right, well, Chris started this and he probably did it for 15, 20 years and he was a certain age and then always thought he was going to sell it and got to the point. And I'm benchmarking against my experience running a media company. And I was like, all right, I've been independent, but the media part of our business is like 5-7 years old and I'm in my 40s. I'm like, all right, 50s, hopefully.
Yeah. To keep doing the math.
At some point there, I'm putting myself in your shoes and being like, all right, is the juice worth the squeeze? Talk to me about, going through the process and then the integration into a media company being inside of a software company. What's that like?
A couple of things. My Semrush colleagues are wonderful. They are smart and thoughtful and data-driven and all good things. But SaaS and media companies are not the same, right? And so there's an interesting conversation that happens around things like recurring revenue. Like, well, how come you don't have recurring revenue? Or should you have recurring revenue? Or does it matter that you don't have recurring revenue? But where's the recurring revenue, right? Like, it's like that kind of thing. And that's not what a media business is. And so I find myself educating and helping. And I was actually on the phone today with someone in finance. She's amazing. But I was explaining like, this is how hotel venues work, like with hotel room attrition. Like this is like what it means. And this is like what the contract looks like, but it isn't really that, because if this happens, then that happens, and there's a rebate.
And sometimes at the end, they always shake you down before the event and say, "Oh, the price is going up." I've heard that's like a regular thing.
It's a funny little business, the event conference business, and it's a business that I haven't thought about much since 2020. In fact, I had said to Andrew Warden, our CMO, I never thought this day would come, and the reason I never thought this, because he asked me why, and I said, well, as Third Door Media, it was too risky for us to go back in person. It's too risky. We could sink the company. If you are looking to sell, let's say 1,000 tickets at $1,200 and you're on the hook for $500,000 of hotel expenses and you miss that number, you could lose $200,000. And that's a huge problem when you're a small company that's struggling. So we had really honed and sharpened our ability to do profitable, very profitable, but smaller virtual events. And now, okay, here comes the big budgets. Here comes the food F&B bills and all the stuff. And so it's really interesting, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, so the integration was interesting. It's still going on. There's still major components of integration that haven't happened. There's still conversations around CRMs and email marketing automation platforms and what should be integrated, what shouldn't be integrated. It's fascinating. Honestly, it really is. It really is. I love learning. I'm so curious about things. I've never been through anything like this at this level. And so it's like, I'm just absorbing it like, wow, there's a lot going on here. And I'm just trying to, identify I said to somebody the other day, like, what's going to kill us? And then what's going to make us heroes? Like, let's focus on those things and then, do those things really well or avoid those things. And so it's a daily thing. And the other thing I'd say is that, do I want to say this on a podcast? Sure. What the hell? Semrush is a very data-driven company.
Not new news.
Not new news, right?
Yeah.
Third Door Media was a intuitive-driven company. Let me just say that, right? We go, we got lots of experience. Everyone, look around, everyone. We got 90 years of experience in the room. What do you think? Do it. Or, nah, it's never going to work. Mm-hmm. That just doesn't work at Semrush, right? That's not how it works. You don't make proposals like, we got a lot of experience, let's just do it. No, it's got to be, I need a P&L and I need a projection and I need the whole thing. And that's great. It's great for the skills and great for the mind, but it's very different culturally. Yeah. And so it's like, how do you bring this little merry band of troublemakers into this big company, not just through the integration and survive, but actually add the value that is the reason that they bought us?
It's funny because it's the world that I live in too. And if anybody understands what you're talking about, it's the guy on the other end of the camera where, I think about my experience running a media business, but I try to take a technology centric approach to it. We've built operating systems and automations and all sorts of tech behind the production of our content, and try to have the right workflows and use data and all of those things. But fundamentally, it's a media company, and you just don't know what's going to get resonance because media changes all the time. It's more of a creative pursuit than software development is, and that to me is the most interesting part of this story. Is not just talking specifically about Third Door Media and its place in my heart, but there is this trend of software companies that are buying media companies. We saw The Hustle and HubSpot, and I'm sure I can name a couple others. And hearing what it's like and some of the sort of integration pain points to me is really fascinating, and hopefully something we'll run into someday.
Hope so.
I get into my 50s or 60s or whatever it is, we're ready to go.
Yeah.
Give me any last words, in terms of the integration. I guess the big question is independence. I think that's probably on the mind of a lot of marketers that have been consuming Third Door Media's content. And how do you keep that sense of, relative creative freedom, but also have somebody with corporate interests that you have to.
So, I think, first of all, the newsroom's the newsroom. There's no real input. They can request whatever they want to request, but we have pretty tight rules around who gets to contribute, how they get to contribute, whether it's a news story that we cover. That's all driven by Danny Goodwin, who runs Search Engine Land, and Mike Pastor, who runs MarTech. And, you can choose to believe it or not, but it's independent. They're not we're programming the MarTech conference and the SMX conference. There's just no input. I've asked for input actually, hey, do you know any really great SEO speakers that we could put on stage? Not necessarily Semrush people, just anybody, because they have a huge network.
I've got a list of them for you.
What's that?
I've got a list of them for you.
Yeah, hit me later. So from a news standpoint, there really is no input in a programming standpoint. Where there is input, but it's interesting because it's not what I thought, and it's really fascinating. So they have kind of proven with a site called Backlinko and their own blog this kind of SEO evergreen rich content strategy. And we've applied it to Search Engine Land and MarTech through some additional resources and some internal resources. And you'll see things on the website, not really MarTech yet. We've kind of started with Search Engine Land just because the affinity is so high. But you'll see there's a new section on Search Engine Land called Guides. And there are these guide pages that are written by a combination of our people and basically they're not really Semrush people. They're kind of contractors that are in the mechanism, in the thing. And what you'll see is things like, and I think this is totally fair. I think when you think about it, you go, this makes a lot of sense. You'll see an article about here's a guide to X, Y, or Z. And it happens to be something that Semrush can do. It's like a media monitoring article. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, what you're going to see is workflows from Semrush, and you're going to see offers to try Semrush on it. Fair enough. The content isn't really skewed towards Semrush as much as it's tried to be written as helpful content, good content, that happens to use Semrush as a workflow to show like that's what it looks like, which I think is fair, and I don't think is a big deal. I think, so we're navigating that, right? That's part of what you'd expect to have happen, and I think it's also part of the challenge of what we're trying to accomplish.
To me, it's expected. And
yeah, I think so too. And again, I'm hedging a little bit only because, like, I think that it's so, like, we were truly independent for so long, and we had our own rules. And it's like, it really is. I mean, honestly, from a growth standpoint of my whole team, myself included, it's like, oh, right, I get it. Like, light bulb came on. And so I think it is expected. I think there's other things on the site that we're testing aggressively, like offers for Semrush and some advertising. And it's like, we're testing it all. And at the end of the day, look, there's a reason there's a reason a software company would buy a media company. And that's that it can drive revenue ultimately. And, we see that Search Engine Land and MarTech have a lot of affinity to the messages that Semrush has on the marketing side. And we're just trying to figure out how to wire those together to get maximum, what's the right way to say it? We're going to get maximum return on that investment while still, as we said earlier, like building and maintaining the brands that we spent 20 years building. It's really important that we don't destroy those brands. And that line is an interesting one.
Yeah. Fundamentally, in my opinion, it's a content play, right? Every brand needs to be a media brand, and you need content to be relevant in media. And if you're a software company, sometimes the easiest thing to do is not go on to Upwork and hire writers that don't really know. You have to find experts and people that have been writing about the space with experience over time.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, where an acquisition like Semrush and Third Door Media is logical. And of course, there's going to be some integration pain points. Of course, there's going to be some times when Semrush wants to be promoted. It is their asset. Fundamentally, I think that this is natural, and it's interesting to see that it's an ongoing trend in the MarTech space.
Yeah, I agree. And like you mentioned, the Hustle and some others. I haven't found that many others, to be honest, but it is interesting, just coming all the way back to the beginning of the conversation. Like, you can try to build these brands yourself, but that's a tough road to hoe, as we know. And, we could probably spend an hour talking about, should software companies think of themselves as media companies? It's a terrific soundbite. I think it all depends on how you want to measure it and how you're going to fund it, right? Like, at the end of the day, like, is it going to work, and how do you determine if it works?
My entire career and my company on the idea that software companies need help becoming media brands.